Good evening and welcome then everybody. It is another Saturday evening and we're here with you to talk about what is happening in government. Of course, this program is dedicated to holding the government accountable. So many things happened over the past week that we need to talk about, and we continue to highlight the defaults on this government. They continue to mess this country up. I can say that without fear of contradiction, that so many things are happening. Crime is spiraling out of control. The Minister of Public Security is busy doing everything else except fighting crime. We have seen all the I don't know how to describe it, the kind of excuses that he has been making time and time again, over and over, about how to tackle crime. This is a man who says, hey, crime is down, we have crime under control. But bandits every single day almost entering the homes of our brothers and sisters in Berbice and other parts of the country. This is a man who is saying, we have this under control. There is no need for an alarm. But, we can compare this to other countries. Guyana is doing quite better. But every single day, persons are being robbed, persons are being murdered, all sorts of things. So we're going to continue to highlight the defaults of this government. They have failed miserably. By the way, on the 11th, they celebrated, if you want to call it, they celebrated 4 years in office. Ask yourselves, brothers and sisters, what has this government really achieved in 4 years? Corruption, it is at an all-time high. Mismanagement of our economy, of our country. Crime continues to spiral. The bottom line is our people are suffering. Guyanese are worst off 4 years after. 4 years after, Guyanese are worst off. A lot of persons can't pay their bills. They can't get a mortgage. They're out of jobs. That's the reality. So the 4 years that and all that they're highlighting and they're gloating about their achievements are basically programs and projects that were started by the PPP, that they are continuing, that they mess up, the want of a better term. The airport project, they took over a contract that says we were going to get a brand new airport, a completely new airport, extended runway, 8 air bridges, a new terminal building. What they did is that they modified the contract. And we talk about this so much. They modified the contract, reduced the scope of works, 4 air bridges, a renovated airport, which is leaking and flooding, by the way, for the same, for matter of fact, for more money. For more money. They took the Sheriff Street expansion project. They modified it. It was supposed to be open drains so that the water from the road can drain quite easily and avoid flooding the people who are living there. They put some tubes in and they sealed the road. The other day there was a little bit of rain and the water was going into people's yards already. Every other project that you could think about. They criticized the Marriott Hotel. They're dining and unwinding there now. Every single thing that this government put their hands on, they destroyed it. But tonight I want to talk a little bit, I don't want to focus so much on that. I want to talk a little bit about preparations for elections. They went to Parliament and they table supplementary budget for $3.4 billion for the elections. The problem is, despite doing that, they're pushing ahead with the whole issue of house-to-house registration, giving the public the impression, this is the kind of misinformation from this government, this is how the government is leading our people astray, that the whole issue of house-to-house registration as though it's a constitutional requirement. It is not. There is nothing in our constitution that says there must be house-to-house registration. What it says is that the list must be updated, and that all, everyone should be eligible person should be able to vote. And I'm trying to get to that letter, that opinion that the legal officer of GCOM would have given to commissioners. And I see they're going now busy, they're going after the legal officer, calling it deceit and all sorts of things. I'm trying to find that opinion, and I wanted to share it with you. So this opinion, it's dated the 13th of May 2019. And among the things that the legal officer said, I'll just quote sections of it for you. And she quoted the Elections Laws Amendment Act number 15 of 2000, section 7.1, which was amended by the Local Authorities Elections Amendment Act of 2018. In 2018, they amended the law. They are the ones who did it. 2018, they were in office. They amended the law, the Elections Amendment Act. And this is what it says. It says, and I quote, this is section 7.1, where there is an interval of more than 6 months after the qualifying date, which meaning once the list that they have, there is an interval of more than 6 months. The last qualifying date, I think it was October, the last day in October of 2018. So once there's a 6 month break between the last qualifying date, then the official list of electors, which is prepared under section 5.1, and the day appointed for the next election. So once within the last qualifying date and the day appointed to the next for the next election, there is a 6 month lapse, then you ought to update the list, right? But this is how you update the list, and this is the big issue. We are not saying that the list don't need to be updated. None of us in the PPP are saying that, look, we don't want you to update this list. Had it been elections before April 30, then the list needed not to be updated because it's within the 6 months, and the list would have been used for the local government elections in November. But we're saying, as it is now, we're not saying that you don't need to update the list. How you update the list is the issue, because they're trying to use house-to-house registration as a means of delaying, of stretching out the time and running away from the elections. So this is what she's saying here. So once there is a 6 month lapse, the commissioner shall cause the official list of electors to be revised in accordance with the procedure established by the commission by regulation. So these are the two main regulations that you need to use. One, by adding thereto the names of persons who have or may become qualified for registration as electors after the said qualifying date and before the day appointed for the elections. So that's the first thing that you need to do to update or revise the list. And the second thing you need to do is to delete therefrom the names of persons who are registered as electors but have ceased to be qualified to be so registered after the said qualifying date and before such date, being a date prior to the date appointed for the elections, as may be specified by the commission by notification in the official gazette. So essentially what the legal officer is saying is two things. One, once there's a 6 month lapse, you ought to revise the list. So you revise the list by one, you remove by let me go with her order. By one, by adding the names of persons who have become qualified as electors. And two, delete the names of those persons who cease to be qualified as electors. That would speak primarily to persons who would have died, and of course, their names ought to be removed from the list. And in the first instance, it will speak to, in terms of adding, it speaks to persons who have reached the age of 18 to begin voting. You add those names. There is no need for house-to-house registration. How you add those names? One, you have a national register, if I can put it in quite simpler terms, where from the time someone reaches 14 years old, they're registered, whether by continuous registration, house-to-house registration. They're registered, so they become part of that national register, where all the names of persons 14 years and older are placed. Then there is a qualifying date before the elections. Once those persons become 18 years old, by the qualifying date, and if you can use, let's take for example last year before the local government elections, I think the qualifying date was the end of October. So all the persons who would have reached 18 by the end of October or before or by the date of the elections, because once you reach 18 on the date of the elections, you're qualified to vote. You're 18 years and you're qualified to vote. So all the persons who basically will reach 18 and are qualified to vote from the qualifying date to the date of elections are added to the list of electors. You're already registered since you're 14, whether by continuous registration or house-to-house registration. So you're already on that national list. So they just need to transfer those names over to the list of electors. That's one. The other part of that is that you can have a period of continuous registration, properly advertised, to inform persons who are not registered and who would be qualified by the date of the election to vote to come in and register. GCOM has offices all across the country, many offices in each region. So those persons who will become qualified by the date of the election, they can come into GCOM and they can be registered. You can have a period of 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 months, whatever you decide. And those persons are going to come in and they're going to be registered. And they're going to be added to the list. You communicate by law. They're required to get the information from the General Registrar's Office of persons who would have died where a death certificate was issued. And you remove the names of those persons who are no longer qualified to be on the list. They died, so they can't come and vote. You get the death certificate, you get that information from the GRO's office, and you remove those names. And you revise the list. This is not rocket science. The whole argument about house-to-house registration is a delay tactic. And they're saying, oh, you want to disenfranchise young people who want to vote. I'm going to say this, and any right-thinking young person or any Guyanese will, I think you will agree with me, that if you are interested in voting and there is a period of continuous registration, you are going to get to a GCOM office and register. Because you're interested in participating in the elections, you're going to go to the GCOM office. There is no guarantee that if GCOM comes to your home during house-to-house registration that automatically you will go and vote. So this story about we need to do house-to-house registration because these people are going to be disenfranchised because you're not going to get a chance to register is propaganda. It's a delay tactic. You can go to the GCOM office. Then there is a period of claims and objections where names of persons who are on the list and who ought not to be on the list can be removed, and persons who are not on the list and ought to be on the list can be added. So you don't need 8 months and 9 months and 10 months to house-to-house registration to go to every home. Nothing in the Constitution, nothing in the laws of Guyana says there must be house-to-house registration. So let us get this clear and let's dismiss this propaganda that the AP and UFC is pushing about people need to have house-to-house registration. They're lying to you. They're trying to buy time because of all the reasons that you're seeing of who getting money where and who collecting money, who getting money in their account from overseas and who can't account for money and who getting contracts and all sorts of things. That is what they're interested in, so they want to buy time as much as possible. The list can be updated in the matter of probably a month and a half. And if you say you got to hold elections within 3 months, then 3 months the list can be updated continuously with all the other activities that you're preparing for the elections. So this story about you need to update list, you need to do house-to-house registration, should be rejected by all right-thinking Guyanese. This country is at a standstill under this coalition government. It is time that we have these elections, get it over with, and move forward. We cannot sit, we cannot wait on the propaganda that is coming from the APNU, AFC, and all sorts of excuses that they're trying to push to us to try to tell us that, oh, these things and the PPP is this and the PPP is that. You cannot believe them. Is there anything you can believe? They said they didn't get any money from ExxonMobil, but automatically 18 million US showed up when it was exposed. How can you believe them? How can you believe them when they promised you jobs, young people? You're going to get jobs. You have a lot of jobs to you. How can you believe them? And then their cronies are the ones getting the jobs. They created 4 high-paying jobs for 4 ministers, ex-ministers, but they can't find a job for the single mother who is struggling to take care of her children, for the young man who completed a degree at the university or got 10 subjects CXC. They can't find a job for him, which will be a fraction of a percentage, if you understand what I'm saying. Probably less than 0.05% of the salary for one of those persons who got probably a 10 subject or a university degree. The salary of that person may be 0.025% of one of those directors, or what you call them, the directors, they're making them these ministers, these ex-ministers. You can't find job for the young people. You can't find job for the sugar workers that you fired without no plan. How can you believe them, comrades? You can't. You can't. This government is about deceit. It's about lies. It's about looking after friends and family. It's about filling their own pockets at the expense of the poor people of this country. All the young people, the hoodwinked young people in 2015, when they started to vote like a boss, whatever you call it. Where are the jobs for the young people? Belatedly, they push a young lady into parliament and give her a ministerial position, clearly a rubber stamp position. Because, with all due respect, Dr. Rupert Rupert was doing absolutely nothing. So he was just there as a minister. So they pushed her in there and they gave her a rubber stamp position. Call her Minister of Public, Public Service. I can't even remember the ministry because the ministry does nothing. In the department of all sorts of fancy thing. You cannot trust this government. You cannot trust the APNU AFC. They have lied to young people. They have lied to the poor people of this country. They have lied to the pensioners. They have lied to the single mothers. They have lied to every single person. So don't believe them. So I wanted to address this issue of house-to-house registration, that it seems to be Mr. Trotman, the commissioner, the GCOM commissioner from the government. There's a fetish for him. He has a fetish for house-to-house registration. He's singing the song of his masters at Congress Place. That, and apparently the WPA is now part of the PNC because he's singing the Congress Place song of house-to-house registration, he and Vincent Alexander. That's all they know, house-to-house registration. The purpose of it, I don't think they don't even understand the purpose of it. So let us not get down the road of this nonsense that they're trying to tell you about house-to-house registration. I just outlined, and I think all the other comrades who are doing programs, the leader of the opposition, all of us would have spoken on this matter, and I think we've made it clear. You can have a short period of continuous registration, or you can have a period of claims and objections where you can cleanse the list, you can revise the list. I wanted to, quickly before I move on to the next issue, I wanted to go through some more of what the legal advisor said. Based on the above section, those two that I outlined there, the list must be updated biannually by adding persons who are now qualified to be registered to the list, and those who are no longer qualified to be registered to be taken off the list. The use of the word revise suggests that the process is not one where a new list is generated, but one where the most recent list is updated or amended. Very important. The word revise simply means that you update the list. It says nothing of generating a new list. The law says nothing about generating a new list. It basically says you take the list, the most recent list, and you add those who need to be added, and you delete those who need to be deleted. And how you add? You can have a period of continuous registration, or you can have a period of claims and objections, where those persons who are not on the list can come and say, hey, I'm qualified to be on the list, but I'm not on the list. And they'll add you. Where you get the information from the GRO's office and you remove those persons who would have died, or where relatives and so on will look at the list, the preliminary list when you put it up to say, hey, I see my grandmother is here, but she died, so could you remove her? As simple as that. The process is quite simple. I don't think I can make it much simpler for those in the AP and UAFC in particular, because I think most of Guyana understand and they recognize the fact that these people are trying to fool them. Trying to fool them to fill their pockets. They want to stay there. You know? All money seems to be going to their heads. So I want to read this other part of where section 5.1, the section, the commission shall, on being instructed in writing by the commission to do so, cause to be prepared an official list of electors with reference to the qualifying date, which shall be, as the commission shall be order specify. So basically, you delete the names of like I explained just now, and you have a list, and you have the period of claims and objections where you remove the names of those who are not supposed to be there. I'm going to take a few quick calls before I touch on at least one other issue. I don't want to put too many issues tonight. I think we needed to address the issue of this house-to-house registration and what is happening at GCOM. Now, because this young lady gave this opinion, this lawyer gave this opinion, in keeping with the law, by quoting the law, what the law says, you have these guys, Mr. Trotman and all the others there, are going after her, are talking about deceit and all sorts of things. I'm trying to figure out what is the deceit. The young lady quoted the law, and she told you exactly what the law says and how you can update the list and why you don't need to have house-to-house registration and spend hundreds of millions of dollars on an exercise that is not necessary. That's the point I'm making. It's an exercise that is not necessary. We already have a list that needs to be updated or revised. I don't think I can emphasize more on that. I'll start taking some calls. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good night, brother.
I feel just funny because this taxpayer money, who will really pay it? The government, the purpose, the free thing from the thing. Why you had to take it back to put them in the cabinet again?
I didn't get you clearly. Which payment from where? The estates, you said?
The four government of free things.
Uh-huh.
Why they had to go back in the cabinet? Why really?
A job for the boys. The boys gotta get jobs. That's what they're doing. They don't care about you.
So we pay taxpayer money to them, right?
Yeah. That's what's happening.
They have been the lavish of we money.
Well, that's the reality. It's about, you remember the statement by Miss Valda Lawrence? About jobs for PNC, you gotta be PNC before you get and so on?
No, but let me tell you something, right? In this government, if you check, the parliament can't hold them. They have to make 20 more seats at the back.
All right, brother. Thanks for coming through. All right? Yes, and that's a very valid question. Why these guys? You know what this government did with those 4 ex-ministers? I don't even know if you should call them ex-ministers because apparently they're still ministers based on the power that they have. Is that they created practically 4 more ministries or 4 more ministers because these directors, they have significant powers. So you're paying them probably a minister's salary or more than the ministers in those positions to work in a ministry. So you have a minister and then you have a director. Right? The director has the same amount of power or probably more power than the minister. And you pay him a super salary. So practically they employed 4 more ministers. That's basically what they did. Right? They didn't replace them. They employed 4 more ministers because there's still These guys are still in the ministries with significant powers, but more importantly, with huge salaries. Good evening. I think I lost that one there. All right, so, and the other question I want to address while we take some calls is these 6 ministers and the 1 personal assistant that went to Trinidad for the CCJ hearing. And the excuse that was given, or the explanation that was given by Mr. Joseph Harmon, the Director General in the Ministry of the Presidency. I don't know, it's a whole military operation apparently. Yes, so let me take one more call before I address that issue. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, brother.
I want to make a point, man.
Yeah, go straight ahead.
I'm a big man, but I'm 59 years of age.
Ah.
And I think this country will bleed under these 2 parties. Both. I'm not blaming one. Both. They're fighting against each other too much. This country needs a coalition government. One government, not 2. We got coalition, we got black, huh? Put them the way.
No. You got to be careful. No. Hold on. No. You can't use those terms. Those are not terms that you can use. I'll cut you off. You're not going to come on this program and address anybody like that. Sorry. You have to be respectful. Show respect. You cannot be describing people in the manner in which that gentleman just did. You may have a very good point, but I'm not going to allow you to continue the minute you're going to go down that road. Please be respectful. All right? I was making the point that the 6 ministers and a personal assistant who went to Trinidad for the CCJ hearing. Mr. Harmon said that, the judges needed to see the government represented in the House to know that the government has an interest in the case. The government has an interest in the case. The government hired a battery of lawyers, highly paid. The Attorney General was there. Not the best representation, but he was there. So the government already had a large team representing it there. So the excuse of you sending all these people, 6 ministers, and I think I want to share something with you, comrades. I want to share something with you. These ministers are not flying, none of them are flying economy class. You know what they fly? First class. That's the first thing. So these guys go there and they fly first class. And we can look at an average ticket to Trinidad, first class, probably what, about 400 return I'm talking about. About 450 US return, first class. So you check 7 persons flying first class at an average of 450 US per person. Look at the total there. There was accommodation for at least 2 nights, probably 1. Radisson, you understand, they stayed, probably $350, $300 per night. You do the math as we go along. Then you have to cater meals for those persons. So I did some calculations. Let me say the 7 persons first class. It's about $6,020 US dollars. Probably about $450 thereabout for a ticket. The hotels for 2 nights, it's probably at $300 a night, another $4,200 US. Meals for 2 days for 7 persons. The standard used to be $100 US per day, and I understand that they increased it, but I work with the $100 US. For 7 persons for 2 days, you're talking $1,400 US. Then transportation on the ground. If you saw the pictures in the video, you'll see all the fancy vehicles that they were moving around with. Let's say $2,000 for the 2 days, and probably another $2,000 for other spending, because these guys, high life, they have to live the high life. These guys spent close to $4 million of our money, taxpayers' money, to go to Trinidad, and they had absolutely no technical or legal input in the case. By the way, it's being aired live online, so you could have looked at it from anywhere. So we spent $4 million almost for 6 ministers and a personal assistant. They fly to Trinidad. to sit in the court, spectators. They made no contribution, and that is the kind of waste of. I think we lost that one there. Right? So the numbers are on the screen. You can give us a call, if I can get it right, 233-2459 or 501-0617. We want to hear from you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, brother.
I'm looking at your program there, man. Those people that went at the CJJ hearing, I guess the best person supposed to be there, and she was there, is the Minister of Education. She's gone to learn maths.
Thanks for coming through, brother.
Diana.
Thanks for coming through.
Good.
Yes. So, and that is how our monies are being spent. You know, we're still awaiting this government to tell us how much they're paying those lawyers who represented them. Especially the ones that they brought from all over the Caribbean. Had to be a lot of money on an exercise in futility. So, you know, I wanted to raise that issue with regards to how this government is wasting taxpayers' money. They're not concerned about your livelihood. They're not concerned about ensuring that you have a job. They're not concerned about ensuring that we don't get blackout. And that's a big issue. I think last week I said I'm going to talk a little bit about it this week. But I can tell you, it's absolutely crazy what is happening with power outages almost every single day. And I understand that a lot of people are going to be without power for tomorrow. I hope it's because of some sort of maintenance or something of that sort. But the issue is, every single day there is a blackout. Blackout as we call it in common Guyanese parlance, right? Power outage. Every single day. And there is absolutely nothing coming from GCOM to say to our people, these are the reasons. From GPL. I don't know how I get it. GCOM is stuck in my head. Let me take another call. Good evening. Hello, good evening. I think we lost that one there. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, brother.
Like your program.
Yes, sir.
And I want to speak about jobs,
Yeah.
about the government. If the government still got people who's over 55 still working, how is it young people is going to get jobs? It's like me. I'm working for the government, and they got people still who is 65 still working. I can't get a position, and they should look into that. Who persons that reach 55 should go home and let young persons get jobs. Not wait until you reach 65, 70, and young people on the road can't get jobs, and people with papers can't get jobs. And if you look at most of the government entities, there are people over 55, and they're not looking into it.
Well, they promised young people jobs. Remember the promise?
Yeah, they promise people jobs. Yeah, but they're not looking into it. And I don't really want to call name some which entity.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
Yeah, and they should, because we got a lot of children coming out to school every single August. So they should look in, because I know for sure that every entity, they got at least 5 or 6 persons is over 55. And that's why young people is not getting jobs.
Thanks for coming through, brother. Thanks for coming
Thank
through.
you very much.
Yes. So, this young man is saying he's working with the government. And he outlined one of the problems. The bigger problem really is, and this is nothing against the older folks working, but I think, you have to create the opportunities for young people. If you can't create the opportunity, don't promise them like you did. You lie to them. You're going back to them now and try somehow you think that you can be able to convince them that, oh, we're going to get job this time around for you. It's not going to work like that. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Good night, brother.
I would just ask you, them appointed ministers then,
Yeah.
why them carry them to the CCG for follow the code, and taxpayer money you have to pay for book passage and hotel room and all that stuff. People getting no job in this country and them creating more people for their 65 and 70 years in the parliament. For what? For what?
Well, that's the problem. They promise young people jobs and there is nothing for them, but they have to create jobs for the boys. party loyalists, you know, those
Why
who...
you care them people pull up the coat over there, show that the people that you have, that the people work with? Huh? That is wasting our time. You see the whole Caribbean country just laughing at Guyana with what to do there?
Certainly.
People have seen that for going on.
Thanks.
Or just shut a blind eye on and everything.
Well, it seems so. They don't care. They don't care about the people, brother. Thanks for coming through.
You have a good night.
Thanks for coming through. Yes, so, and that's the thing. They don't care about the people of this country. Absolutely. Right? That's your business. If you don't have a job, go sell plantain chip and sell cook-up. Nothing is wrong with that. But everybody can't sell plantain chip. Who's going to buy from whom? Everybody can't sell cook-up. They are not creating an environment where young people can start their own business. You can't get a loan from the bank. The banks have extremely high numbers of defaulting loans. So they have an issue of giving more loans because they don't know if you're getting into a business venture, if you're going to be successful. But not necessarily successful, if because of the economy, whether the business itself is going to flourish. If you, and I think I mentioned this before, if you walk along this country, you're going to see, especially in the countryside, you're going to see how many small businesses would have closed. And large businesses as well are closing. They're scaling down operations, they're closing. Because money is not circulating in the country. The government is not creating any kind of stimulus to kickstart the economy. All they're kickstarting and stimulating is their personal interests. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, yes.
Good evening, brother.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm here trying, man.
Okay, first time I say, welcome back. No, this is the first time I tuning back to you on here.
Okay.
Okay, first time I say, I don't think the ministers them are needed in at the CCG. The money that they take and spend there, they should have given to the children who need help to go overseas and do surgery.
I agree with you.
Because a lot of children in this country on the air asking for a donation for go and do surgery and whatever they got to do. The money should have been done for the children or discounted on the tax, on the VAT, on water for the pensioners. These ministers them eat a lot because if all this money done in meals, body and traveling, I don't know. In Guyana, hey, some people don't work 100,000 a month.
Most people, in at least in the public service.
Yeah, and these guys eat 100,000 a day. You know? So just imagine what happened to the poor class of people. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks for coming through, brother. Good evening. Hello. Hi, good evening.
Hello, good night.
Hi, good night, dear.
I want to congratulate you guys for the work that you're doing here.
Thank you.
And the caller that called and talked about the job, the 50 home years, I think he is wrong. Allow that age group to work. I think he's wrong about that. And you guys keep up the good work and let you guys get back into power and build this country.
Thank you very much, dear. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening, brother.
Keep up the good work. Here, one thing I got to comment on this thing. These people don't have no shame. And once you don't have shame, you can continue in the same manner and behavior you will. So, they don't have shame, and believe me, this country will never go forward under this government. Alright?
All right. Thanks for coming through, brother. All right. I have just a minute more, so I'm not going to take any more calls. But I quickly want to, operator, to just read this little piece here. So we see the whole thing about the Minister of Public Infrastructure, monies being deposited in his personal account, 9,000 US, I understand. So the minister is claiming that the 9,000 US that was deposited by a Chinese company into his account was a reimbursement for his travel to a conference that he attended sometime in 2016. So Mr. David Patterson is saying, hey, the money is not my money. I traveled to attend this conference, and the monies were in China, and the money was actually a reimbursement. It was the cabinet approved and so on. I don't want to go into his whole excuse, which I don't think makes any sense, which I think makes no sense, absolutely. He's saying that the money was taken from Marad for him to travel, and then the money had to be returned, reimbursed to Marad. I have a few questions. He published a letter, an invitation to the event, but he didn't show in that letter that they, one, the people are saying that we're going to reimburse your travel, and two, there is nothing to show where the money actually went, apart from in his account. So I have a few questions quickly I want to ask the Honorable Minister of Public Infrastructure. One, where is the remainder of this letter that you published, this half letter that you published? It had to be signed by somebody who sent the letter. There is no page showing a signature. Clearly that means parts of the letter missing. There is nowhere in this letter or any other document that the minister would have released to show that the organizers promised to reimburse his travel. Thirdly, where is the documentation for the advance from Marad, which he said he took to travel? And where is the documentation to show that when he returned and he received this money, he actually sent it back to Marad? The other question is why it took the minister more than a year to reimburse this money. The money got into his account. Why it took him only recently, more than a year, to reimburse the money? And the big question is, why was this reimbursement, if it's a government of Guyana he was representing, why was the reimbursement deposited in his account, his personal account? Sat there for a year. Then he claimed that he transferred it. And based on my understanding, most times when you go to these travels, monies are being given out of, most of the times, not an agency of a ministry, but probably from the central ministry or the office of the president. So I would like Minister Patterson to answer those questions. If he can't, then our conclusion is what exactly we would have concluded. Until next week, we're going to be back with you. We want to thank all of you for joining us this evening, as we continue to hold this government accountable. I'm your host, Eddie Layne. I'm going to be back here with you next week, God's willing. Until then, have a safe rest of the weekend and be absolutely careful. Bye for now.